Kentucky Blue was a top 10 team in 2018. Will they have enough firepower to repeat? Position previews next on Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. All right, we're talking Wildcats, the Kentucky version with Kevin McGuffey from Last Word on College Football. We encourage you to help us build the channel by grabbing the Amazon link in the description section below. Do all your Amazon shopping using that link. Doesn't cost you an extra penny and helps us build the channel. Kevin, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Mark. Thanks for having me on. It's always great to hang out and talk to you.
Absolutely. We have touched upon many of the teams in the SEC, Alabama, LSU, Ole Miss, and Florida among many, with Georgia coming up and Auburn as well this week. We get to the Wildcats, the surprise top 10 finisher from last season. That still has to feel mighty good.
Yes, it is. It's been really good. You know, the excitement is still really high around here right now. There was a story that was posted earlier today that Kentucky is one of the few schools right now that's actually ahead of season ticket sales from 2018. You know, in this declining climate that we're in, where you can just sit at home on your 50-inch TV and not go to the games. I think it's like almost 6,000 more season tickets they sold from this time last year, which is just a great sign for Coach Stoops and the Cats, and just shows how, as you and I have talked many times, the process, how they built from year to year to year, and culminating with that 10-win Citrus Bowl season last year.
So we're breaking down all the positions on the Kentucky football team for 2019 with Kevin McGuffey here. So we start at quarterback, and the timing is odd. That I was actually listening to a podcast yesterday, and this is something that I do about once every 3 years, is listen to somebody else's podcast. So this just doesn't happen. But I was riding home from work, got bored with whatever music was on, and I just popped open. I had saved a couple podcasts that had streamed down and probably released 1,000 episodes, and I didn't listen to any of them. So I just clicked on one. I do not know the gentleman that were hosting the podcast. Forget the name of the podcast. It doesn't matter. I wouldn't name it anyway because I don't have glowing comments to make about the podcast. I thought it was rather ignorant, and the two guys weren't very knowledgeable. I bring that up to say that they were talking about the Gunnar Hoak transfer to Ohio State and talking about the Ohio State quarterback room. Mm-hmm. And then they made reference to if Gunnar Hoak couldn't beat out, and they had some derogatory terms and phrases to make about Terry Wilson, that if he couldn't beat him out, well, man, Ohio State's backup quarterback situation must be in lousy shape. And I thought, okay, well, yes, Terry Wilson is not one of the best quarterbacks in the country, nor does he post dynamic numbers. Is he Tom Brady or Peyton Manning dissecting a defense in the pocket? No, he is none of those things. But was he capable? Was he effective when he needed to be? And I would say on most occasions, absolutely yes, in 2018.
Oh, I'd agree 100%. You look at the, look at the Florida game where he, where Kentucky snapped the 31-game losing streak against Florida. He had one of his best games. It was the first road SEC test. And like I said, Terry's not going to overwhelm me with the numbers. If you look at last year, he had 11 touchdowns with 8 interceptions and threw for a little less than 200 or 2,000 yards. But, he just did a lot of the little things, made timely catches, made timely throws, timely runs. And, one of the things that, Coach Stoops and Eddie Grand, Darren Henshaw, has talked about is that they're really looking for a jump from that first season, to this season. Because if you think about it, he had never played in a college football game, major college football game before until last year. And, getting basically thrown to the wolves, in the SEC, he did, led them to a 10-win season. I mean, you can't argue with that. And I understand, Gunnar Hoak. I was, a lot of people were disappointed that he decided not to stick around, because basically you're a sprained ankle from being, basically being the guy. And now you're at Ohio State with, as you said, as a jumbled mess at quarterback. But, for Kentucky, it's cut and dry. Terry Wilson is the guy. Behind him, the Cats went out and picked up something they really, really needed. They got a graduate transfer, Sawyer Smith, from out of Troy. He came in last year, I think, when Caleb Barker got injured. He threw for, I believe it was 1,600 yards and 14 touchdowns. He's a guy who's in, he's going to be that guy. If something happens to Wilson, he can come right in. I think he'll acclimate himself very well, learning the offense. And that was the one major concern that we had, going back to the end of last season, is what the backup quarterback situation. And they've addressed that. And I think, Smith, if pressed into service, can do an excellent job. But going back to what I was saying, they're expecting huge things, a huge improvement from Wilson this season. He's stuck around like all, pretty much since the end of last season, practicing, working hard, trying to get stronger, working on his arm, his accuracy. The accuracy, was a bit of a problem, at times last year. But like I said, they're looking for the huge, a big jump up. I just said he may not be, a Tom Brady, Cam Newton, caliber quarterback, but he did lead, Kentucky. He was the quarterback, led Kentucky to their best season, in 41 years. So obviously that has to count for something.
Sawyer Smith, as you mentioned, coming in from Troy, completed 63% of his passes. You mentioned the yardage totals, 14 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. I instantly, knowing once you go to the group of 5 level, my thought is, once I see a transfer quarterback in particular come in, okay, what did he produce against the better teams on the schedule? Because the level of play is all over the place, because a team like Troy will go out and play 1 or 2 SEC teams, maybe a Big Ten team. They'll play a number of Power 5 schools that are pretty good, if not really good, and then they'll dive into their conference play, and the level of play goes down. Unfortunately, Sawyer Smith did not participate against most of the best teams on the schedule. 4 of 5 passing against Boise State in the opener. Did not play against Nebraska, even though the Huskers were down and really weren't that good on defense, but still a Power 5 opponent from the Big Ten. Finished up with a really nice game against a Buffalo team that, despite not winning the MAC championship, was the best team in the regular season in the Mid-American Conference. Hit 31 of 44 passes for 4 touchdowns and no interceptions in that game. So he's not necessarily a guy that you want to see out there week after week after week after week. But if Wilson gets nicked up, not hurt seriously, but nicked up, he's a guy that obviously has a level of play where he has proven against some decent opponents that he can be a stopgap guy that can get the job done, maybe get you a win or two and get Wilson back in the lineup.
Oh, you're exactly right. That's exactly what they were looking for. They had, before Smith came in, they had Tommy Stevens from Penn State, who came and visited campus, and then moved on to, I can't remember if he officially signed with the new school yet or not, but like 2 days after, all of a sudden they said, hey, Sawyer Smith's on campus, and they think he's going to, sign with Kentucky. And then there it was. But as you said, like I was going to mention the Buffalo game. He had a great game against Buffalo, struggled a little bit in their conference championship game against Appalachian State. But, Appalachian State had one of the better, I thought one of the better defenses, especially non-Power 5 schools, in the country last year. But as you said, he's a guy I think that the coaching staff thinks can come in, do what needs to be done and possibly get a couple wins, maybe even, Wilson on occasion. And, see what happens, with Kentucky's, I know we'll talk about schedules. I'm sure, Kentucky's schedule isn't, exactly the hardest one this year in 2019. But like I said, he's definitely a guy I think could get a couple wins if needed.
Now, if I'm not mistaken about Tommy Stevens, and folks don't hold me to this, I just looked him up. I just did a search because as soon as you mentioned him, I thought I just saw where he signed the other day, and I can't remember what school. This attests to that you can't believe everything you read on the internet, is that I pulled up his page, and somebody has him going to Michigan State, and that's instantly triggered. I'm almost positive that he signed with Mississippi State. Joe Moorhead, the offensive coordinator at Penn State, going to Mississippi State. Obviously, Tommy Stevens played there. That makes a lot of sense, and that's what comes to mind that I remember seeing the other day. But if you look at his Wikipedia page, he is playing for Michigan State. That's incorrect.
Yeah, I think it's a different MSU. Yeah, that was what most people thought, was that he was going to reunite with Joe Moorhead down in Starkville. So, yeah, like I said, I think, with Smith, I think he'll be a more than capable fill-in. And as I said, they're looking for much bigger and better things out of Terry in 2019.
And Kevin, despite the issues in terms of accuracy, throwing the ball downfield for Terry Wilson, I think both of us could walk into any college football bar in America and win a bet if we said Terry Wilson's completion percentage last season, 67.1 over or under.
Right. And it was 67.2, I think.
Exactly.
I'm looking at the stat.
We would take the over and win a lot of money, I think. I don't think people would think, okay, this kid was a mess throwing the football downfield. He completed 67% of his passes, and that was under control.
Yeah, and they did do a lot of short passes, but they also, you know, he and Lynn Bowden, who I'm sure we'll talk about, you know, they developed quite a rapport with each other, and that's going to be something. You know, they had several games, like the Florida game is specifically a nice, you know, long touchdown, but yeah, it's kind of hard to. It's going to be hard to improve on 67% completion percentage. But if he can pull that off this year, that would really be something.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the Power Fives position by position. We've already carved through about 10 or 12 teams. We're working on Kentucky with Kevin McGuffey from Last Word on College Football. So please dive into the videos. Join us on Patreon as well. If you love college football, you obviously do. I am responding to your viewer comments. So that would be a comparison of 6,000 year-to-date last year, 36,000 plus year-to-date as of right now. So thank you so much for the viewer comments. I'm going to respond to those immediately online, live stream each and every week, and also another live stream over on Patreon at our Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football community, where we bring you on to talk college football with me. So it'll be a whole lot of fun on Patreon. Go to patreon.com, search Mark Rogers TV.